Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Yaron Brook Show. Thank you for joining us this evening, this Friday night. Hope everybody's looking forward to a fantastic weekend. All right. I just realized I want to talk about a pretty depressing topic today, but so be it. Sorry to start off your weekend this way, but maybe I'll make it up to you tomorrow. Maybe I'll talk about something more positive on my show tomorrow at 12 p.m. East Coast time will be my last show for the Blaze. So don't miss out on that. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock Easter time, my last show on the Blaze. And then we'll also do a show on Sunday, another Living Objectivism show. So a full weekend of Yaron Brook, if you're so inclined. I'll probably be traveling all of next week, so there probably won't be too many shows next week. But this weekend, we got them fully stacked. Somebody's already called with a question. Hold up, people. I haven't even said anything. Well, thanks for calling, but I'm not going to take any questions for a little while. Let me develop a thesis here, and then I'll take as many questions as you want. All right, so full weekend of shows from the Yaron Brook Show. Plenty of opportunities to ask questions, plenty of opportunities to comment. And again, thank you all for being on the show today. I've said many times on past shows, on past episodes of the Yaron Brook Show in one form or another, that one of the things that pervades the era in which we live, one of the things that most symbolizes the era in which we live, and maybe the thing that really propelled Donald Trump into the White House, into winning the Republican nomination, and finally into the White House, and maybe that is propelling much of what is happening in the world today, is the dominant presence of the emotion of fear in the culture in which we live. People are afraid. You see that among so-called, working class workers who are afraid of competition from immigrants, or afraid of competition from China or from trade. You see that among many people, primarily on the right, but many people who are afraid of Islam. I mean, there's a reason to be afraid there, but it's out of all proportion. It is the number one issue, the most important thing in their lives. And it dominates every conversation, every perspective, even in the United States, put aside Europe, even in the United States, where the threat of Islam, in spite of 9/11, is relatively small. You see that in the fear people have of crime, rampant crime in the United States, and emphasis on illegal and big, bold immigrants who are just exacerbating the crime epidemic that we have in this country. Again, in spite of all the evidence that crime is pretty low. You see that in the fear of many of my, followers, listeners to the show, of, oh my God, if immigrants get the vote, Democrats will win. Democrats have won many, many times in history. The world is still here. The world has not yet ended, and yet there is panic and hysteria as if a Democratic win is irreversible. Everywhere you look, there is fear. Fear that is sometimes of things that are legitimate, but that is taken completely out of context and out of all proportion. Take Muslims and Islam. And then fear of things that there is nothing really to fear for. Not really, not in the long term. things like trade and immigration. But there's fear everywhere. And Donald Trump capitalized on this. I mean, we've talked about this many times. And of course, the media capitalizes this. The media are fear-mongers. There's constant news is about all the negative things that are happening in the world. Almost never does something good happening in the world make the news. Everywhere we are surrounded by fear. Now, why? I think you have to ask the question of why. Why is fear? And I would add alienation. Alienation is another emotion that I've talked about on past shows. And it's always associated with fear. It's a sense of, I don't belong. The world has moved on. I don't get it. I don't understand. I've been betrayed. The world is not what I expected. And I think those go hand in hand. I don't think you can understand the fear unless one also understands the alienation. And at the core, what is driving all this is a sense of bewilderment, a sense of confusion, a complete sense of not understanding what is going on in the world, why it is happening, what explains it. In other words, people have no sense. People have no sense for the reason things are happening in the world around them. And as the world has become more global, as we now get information from Europe, we get information from the Middle East, we get information from Africa and Asia, and we're bombarded with information. People have no clue what to do with all this information. They have no clue how to integrate it, how to analyze it, how to understand it. And the experts, the intellectuals who claim to be in a position to explain this to people, to make it understandable for them, have betrayed or are so ignorant themselves that they cannot explain it to anybody. So we live today in a world where people just don't understand what's going on. And the explanations they receive from the intellectuals don't make sense because the intellectuals have been wrong so many times. Their predictions have been false so many times. And their explanation for events are so irrational, so stupid. They don't make any sense. They're not provable. They don't actually come to fruition, that nobody believes them anymore. But people need to understand. People have a deep desire, a deep epistemological need to understand the world in which they live. And this is the role of the intellectual. The role of the intellectual is to provide guidance, to help people integrate ideas, to help people gain an understanding of what is going on in their world. We're each focused on the things that we do day to day. We're each focused on making a living and putting bread on the table and keeping a roof over our head. We specialize in the things, in our productive ability. We specialize in a division of labor society. And the role of the intellectual in such a division of labor society is to explain the world to us, or at least give us guidance on how we should approach explaining the world. And yet what we get from our experts is garbage. Is from the left, we get, Marxist misinformation. We get everything these days is explained because all problems in the world today are caused by inequality, for example, as one of the integrating explanations for all the phenomena. But most Americans know that doesn't make sense. Most Americans are not haters. Or we're told by our intellectuals there is no truth. There is no explanation. Forget about explanations. They don't exist. There is no unifying principles. There are no principles. There are no truths. And that doesn't make any sense. Again, the human mind needs to integrate. It needs understanding. It needs principles. And our professors, our leading intellectuals tell us there are no principles. And of course, from the right, what we get is religion. Religion is an explaining hypothesis, but religion doesn't explain anything. It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't provide guidance about anything. Not really. And it certainly doesn't explain the modern world. It doesn't help us with issues like trade, and it doesn't help us with issues like technology and how to deal with them and how to integrate them and what it means for my life, my future, my job. There are no explanations, and therefore religionists revert to, most religionists today, unfortunately, if you look at Huckabee, if you look at Santorum, the political authorities, and of course the intellectuals that guide them revert to the anti-trade, anti-immigration, xenophobia, close the borders, retract everything. Again, that's not an explanation. That's just fear-mongering, nothing else. Or you get on the right, kind of the neoconservative explanations. Well, what we need is a mission. What we need is a war. What we need is to bring peace to the world, to bring democracy to the world, to bring American values to the world. We need to go on a mission. We need a mission to unite us all so we're all one people. But that doesn't explain anything. We're an exceptional people, the neoconservatives tell us. How? What makes us exceptional? We're free. We're capitalist. But are we capitalist? And if capitalism caused the financial crisis, do we want to be capitalist? And they have no answers. There are no answers. And generally, we live in an intellectual environment that has no answers, that gives no answers, that provides no answers. And people are left bewildered. They don't understand the world in which they live. They don't understand what's going on. Yeah, their jobs are being replaced by robots. And more jobs are going to be replaced by robots in the future. Their kids are hooked on their iPhones. When they go into the store, all they see is made in China goods. What to make of all this? And when they open the New York Times, they're more likely to see a story about transgender bathrooms than they are to see a story about, that integrates some truth that is relevant to them. So when people don't understand, when people are bewildered, when people see the world as full of contradictions because everything they explain to them just doesn't make sense, the obvious emotion is fear. The obvious response is alienation. I don't get it. I don't understand. Something's wrong. These people are betraying me. They are betraying you. And this is the one thing true about the Trump campaign. Nothing is true about trade. Nothing he says is true about immigration. But the one thing that is true is that the elites have betrayed the people. And the elites here, primarily, I'm talking about the intellectual elites. The intellectuals have betrayed the people. They betrayed themselves as well, of course, because they have no ideas, they have no answers, and the answers and the ideas that they present are wrong, are false, are disintegrating, are destroying, are destructive. So people feel fear. Now, one of the phenomena, one of the characteristics of fear is to lash out and to try to find explanations somewhere, somehow. And because we still need explanations. We still need an integrating principle. Again, Dr. Peikoff talks about the need for integration, the requirement for integration. Human consciousness cannot survive without integration, without an explanation. What the hell is going on? Why is the stuff that's happening in the world today happening? Why is America where it is today? Why are we deteriorating? Why is our culture not what it used to be? Why is the economy not growing? What's the explanation? And they're not given one by the intellectuals, or the ones that they're given by the intellectuals are empty. They have no content. And this, I think, explains why people are so attracted over the last at least 15 years. Maybe it goes longer than that, but in the last 15 years, I've definitely seen a substantial increase in the appeal of conspiracy theories. Because conspiracy theories explain the world in very simple terms. In very simple terms. In terms that everybody can understand. I mean, if I have to explain what's going on today, I'm going to, and we'll do this a little bit when we talk about George Soros. We're going to talk about ideas, and we're going to just talk about the role of ideas in history and how ideas shape the world, and how these ideas, some ideas necessitate other ideas that come out to counter them, and the destructive nature of both sets of ideas and how that interplays. And how the reason Islam is on the rise is not because Islam has any unique power, but because the intellectual weakness of the West and what it would require. I mean, it's complicated. There's no easy answer. If you want to understand the decline of the West, if you want to understand the rise of the Nazis, you have to read like the Ominous Parallels. And the Ominous Parallels by Dr. Peikoff is brilliant, but it's hard. It's not easy. Most people are not going to read it. Most people, again, look to intellectuals to explain this stuff to them, and the intellectuals are not explaining it to them. So they look for simple explanations, easy explanations, explanations that solve their problem. And you see this on the left and on the right. The conspiracy theories are not limited to any one group. Everybody unites around one thing, which is the conspiracies, because it's easy. It's easy to understand. If George Soros is manipulating everything, if George Soros has some kind of long-term scheme, and he has control over the Rothschilds and the banking empires, primarily the Jewish banking empires around the world, then you can understand why one person is guiding things in a particular direction, and he has a goal. He's the integrating factor. Now, I'm just latching onto George Soros because I see so much about him. And we'll talk about what's real and what's bullshit around Soros. There's a lot of bad around Soros, but it's devalued by turning it into conspiracy theory. So, and again, it's not just on the right. The right has created tons of these. I mean, just see the popularity of Alexis Jones' website. I mean, on the right and on the left, you got conspiracy theories about who brought down the towers in 9/11. Now, of course, because nobody's explained it. Most people don't understand what Islamism is. Most people don't understand the power of radical Islam and how it's really emboldened by the impotence of the West, and why the radical Muslims feel the way they do, and why they act the way they do, and what's the theory behind it. At best, you get some superficial understanding of Islam is evil, Islam wants to destroy the world, all Muslims are bad. And that's the gut response. And that's also a kind of conspiracy theory. Ooh, there's a Muslim conspiracy theory to take over the world. They're guiding people to invade Europe through immigration and take it all over. I mean, bullshit. I mean, they might take over Europe, but it's not because it's some guided conspiracy theory that the mullahs are orchestrating from afar. If Muslims take over Europe, it'll be because Europe capitulates, because Europe gives up, because Europeans convert to Islam. That's how Europe will end if Europe becomes Muslim. Not because of some grand Muslim schemes. Muslims are the mullahs, the radicals are way too incompetent to take over Europe and to have a scheme to take over Europe and to have a central planned mission to take over Europe. So, yeah, we start with something legitimate, Muslims, but then we have to completely demonize them and see it as a conspiracy in order to understand it. Or the flip side is, because I don't understand what motivates the Muslims, and I can't understand their nihilism, and I can't understand what's actually going on, it didn't happen. Because what I can't understand is, the U.S. government. They're pretty evil. I mean, libertarians and some conservatives and leftists can all agree that the government is an evil power. I mean, even I think that much of what the government does is an evil power. Well, if they're an evil power, what would prevent them in order to amassing more money for the military-industrial complex to take over and to invade Iraq and to conquer the world than to bring down a couple of towers? It makes complete sense. Now I understand it, because it's in terms of force, it's in terms of, and now I get it. And why do I want complex explanations about Muslim theology and about the weakness of the West and about ideas and about the battle of ideas through history and Plato and Aristotle and all that, when it's simple? The U.S. government brought down the towers because they want to take over more control over our lives. And look, they have taken over more control of our lives. Look at the NSA and look at the invasion of Iraq and look at all of that stuff. It's self-fulfilling. And it gets to the point where even shootings at schools are now presented, that's a conspiracy because, it's the left trying to take our guns away. And landing on the Mars, on the moon is a conspiracy theory because it plays into the whole point of, government's incompetent. Government couldn't do that. And the U.S. is bad. How could the U.S. actually achieve something like that? People are eager for explanations. And therefore, they gravitate towards the simplest explanation, the neatest explanation. And the simplest explanation, the neatest explanation, the explanation that requires the least thinking. And the explanation that, of course, the intellectuals deny, but that only affirms it, is the conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theories are consequences of a people living in fear, a people alienated, a people betrayed by its intellectuals, but still needing integration and needing explanation. Now, you see this again. You see this on the left and on the right, and among libertarians, and even among objectivists. Because the fact is, the objectivist theory that explains history is hard. It's not self-evident. It's complicated. And people want simplicity. They want easier explanations. They don't want to have to think. Thinking's an effort. Conspiracy theories don't require you to think. It's all George Soros. He's got everything manipulated. He's running the whole gamut. And you don't have to actually examine what George Soros thinks, what his ideas are. They're pretty bad. But nobody actually reads what George believes. All you have to do is look, he funds this group and he funds that group, and he's over here and he's over there. And so it's action. It's perceptual. So again, easy to understand. What we want is easy. What we want is easy. What we want is unthinking. And of course, we've talked about the fact that this fear and alienation and need for meaning drives people to embrace their group, to embrace their tribe, and to join groups and to join tribes, and to relish the experience of being with people who agree with them on the conspiracy theory. This is great. This is great. All emotional, with no ideas, because ideas are hard, and the fact is that the purveyors of ideas today are all pretty bad and can't communicate. And when they communicate, what they communicate is garbage. I mean, look what somebody like Jordan Peterson is managing to do by presenting ideas, just some ideas, not even the most profound ideas, just some true self-help-like ideas. And bam, he's taking off because people need it, people want it, people are desperate for it. Desperate for it. They're desperate for explanations. But what they want are simple explanations. They don't want complexity. That's why Jordan Peterson is brilliant, right? He tells you, he doesn't give you a whole moral system on how to live. What he tells you is make your bed. Stand up straight. He gives you simple concretes that then you can generalize from. But he starts it with something really simple, something behavioral that you can do right now that will change your life right now, or at least make it appear like your life has changed right now. Whether that really changes your life, whether that really has a long-term impact, I'm not going to comment on. But the fact is that, yeah, Jordan Peterson, somebody mentioned this in the chat, is become the surrogate father to young, disillusioned people seeking meaning, seeking integration, seeking understanding, seeking truth. I mean, one of his strengths is he tells young people there is such thing as truth. That's a revelation. Their professors tell them there's no truth. So what we're seeing today, what we've been seeing for 15 years, is the prevalence of these simplistic, meaningless, stupid, superficial conspiracy theories to explain everything, to explain whatever you're afraid of. I mean, we now have, this is one of the things that bugs the hell out of me, and I know you guys get upset at me every time I mention it, but we now have, as President of the United States, a man who worked hard to perpetuate a conspiracy theory about Obama. Now, we all hated Obama. We might even feared Obama. And it was easy to explain it all the way. Well, he's not really an American. It's all a lie. George Soros funded his birth certificate and got him elected in spite of everything. But, Donald Trump lied. Donald Trump supported a conspiracy theory for years and years and years. And it didn't bug all those Americans who voted for him. And again, put aside Hillary Clinton. Didn't bug all those people who voted for him in the primaries before Hillary Clinton was a factor. Didn't bug them. Because their way of explaining the world is conspiracy theory. So he just joined the group. He's just one more of them. He's like them. Simple, unthinking explanations of the world. That's what people desire. That's what they gravitate towards. Now let's talk about George Soros for a minute, because George Soros is the target of many of these conspiracy theories, at least from the right. Although, much of what George Soros says, a lot of people on the right would agree with. So George Soros is this bizarre, mixed character. But the number of weird stories about Soros, the number of conspiracy theories about him standing behind everything that the left does is truly bizarre. Now, it's true. George Soros funds almost every left-wing group out there. There's almost no left-wing group that does not have some George Soros money. He is a lefty. He believes in it. He's dedicated his life. And I'll give him this. He's dedicated his fortune to it. I wish people on the free market side were willing to dedicate their fortune to what they believe in the same way George Soros has. Not only that, he's a very good writer. Do you know what, anybody know what Soros' degrees are in? What he studied as an undergrad? He's actually got a master's in the same topic. I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. What did George Soros study in undergrad and grad school? Anybody know? Philosophy. Good. Stuart got it. Stuart reads all this stuff. He studied philosophy. And not only did he study philosophy with one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. He studied philosophy with a philosopher who landed up being probably the biggest impact, or maybe the second biggest impact, on Friedrich Hayek, the libertarian economist. He studied philosophy with Karl Popper at the London School of Economics. And if you read George Soros, which I actually recommend everybody do, everybody should read George Soros, because if you want to understand the left, if you want to understand where they're coming from. If you want to understand, I'm not talking about the nihilist, destroy everything left, because I don't think Soros is that, at least not in the way he thinks about the world. His explicit ideas are not nihilism. They reject capitalism. They certainly reject laissez-faire capitalism. They are strong believers in social democracy and in a mixed economy. But he is not a Noam Chomsky or complete destruction. He is not an absolute, unequivocal nihilist. And I don't think he hates the West as we know it. I don't agree with that. The problem is that he loves the West of, let's say, 40 years ago in Europe, kind of the mixed economy, social welfare state, where there's generally free speech and generally free this and generally free that. That's what he loves. And that's what he wants for the whole world. That's what he says he wants for the whole world. That's what mostly he does for the whole world. He's a weird form of neo-Keynesian, but he's not exactly a Keynesian either. He's actually a very sophisticated critic of what do you call it? Neoclassical economics. He's a good critic of the Chicago School of Economics. He's right. He's right in his criticism of the Chicago School of Economics, I'd even say. I think he unfortunately, probably purposefully, completely ignores the Austrian School of Economics. But he is right. He's a critic of equilibrium, what's called equilibrium economics, as is Mises, as is Kirchner, as are the Austrian economists. But his solution to the lack of equilibrium, or the fact that equilibrium is never achieved and markets are continuously moving and interacting and changing, is an element, some central planning. Now, I recommend, George Soros wrote 3 articles for the Atlantic magazine. As you know, I'm a big fan of the Atlantic because it has an in-depth article, and he wrote 3 very long, in-depth articles about his views in the Atlantic magazine, 2 in the 90s. The first is called The Capitalist Threat, which you should definitely read. It's thoroughly wrong and even, evil, but it is fascinating because his argument is interesting. You have to read your enemy. You have to understand the enemy if you're going to defeat the enemy. You can't just villainize the enemy. You can't just caricature the enemy. You actually have to understand him. And in a sense, you have to respect your enemy, otherwise you will never defeat him. Soros has this long article explaining what he means by an open society, explaining why capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, and he identifies laissez-faire capitalism as the enemy of what he calls the open society. He identifies communism and fascism as the enemies of the open society. He's against all authoritarianism because, as he says it, he is against all absolutist objective knowledge. He's against truth. He rejects the idea of absolute truth. Of course, how do the central planners know how to manage the elements of the free market economy that he wants them to manage? Well, by trial and error, he says. And they're fallible. He says the number one principle of an open society is the recognition of human fallibility. It's human ignorance, in other words, or the fact that we can never know the truth. Now, that's interesting. That's not trivial. That's interesting because we are fallible. And he says the Enlightenment succeeded but also failed. In that sense, he's a real Kantian. He's a real Hegelian. He starts off the essay called The Capitalist Threat by quoting Hegel. I mean, he's a philosophy student. He understands these ideas. And again, if you want to win, if you want to win in the battle of ideas, then you got to know your enemy. Particularly when your enemy is philosophical. When your enemy represents real ideas. The enemy is not just a thug. The enemy is not just a caricature. The enemy is not just some Jewish financier trying to control the world. The enemy is somebody with a sophisticated philosophical view of the world that is opposite of ours or different than ours. We better understand it. We better be able to combat it. And making caricatures, turning it into conspiracy theories, labeling him and everything he's done as evil and that's it, doesn't help the cause. For example, he funds a lot of things that we agree with, at least I agree with. Like he funds a lot of initiatives to legalize drugs or criminal justice reform, which I support, or a lot of other things that we would support generally. And then he funds things that are down and out evil and bad. And he's got lots of money. And by the way, how did he make his money? That's also I find really interesting. That people who generally support businessmen and generally support finance and generally support capitalism. Here's a capitalist. Here's somebody who's he's one of the richest people in the world. I think he's made something like $25 billion. How did he do it? And the fact that he did it, shouldn't that garner at least some respect, some stop and figure out what's going on? Yeah, I mean, somebody says he funded Occupy Wall Street. Sure, as I said, he funds all leftist groups. So some of the money that he funded to leftist groups funded Occupy Wall Street. And he's a huge critic of much of the financial industry. Some extent, I agree with his criticism. The cronyism that he associates with the financial industry, I agree with. Some completely wrong. He wants to tax capital, wants to do all kinds of awful things. George Soros was one of the first hedge fund managers. He established one of the first hedge funds. And he had a theory on how people trade. And it worked out, and he made money. And his theory is, by the way, based on his philosophy. It's not a random theory. It's based on his Popperian ideas he got from Karl Popper. So again, I give him credit for taking his philosophy, applying it into the real world, and actually making money. Many of the world's greatest investors, many of the world's most successful hedge fund managers and financiers worked under George Soros. Jimmy Rogers, who's a well-known libertarian money manager, very, very successful money manager who's moved to Singapore and lives in Singapore and is often interviewed by Fox Business and by CNBC, was George Soros' number two for many, many years. And I think the other guy, Druckenheimer, and then there are a bunch of them. If you look at the top people who worked for Soros, a lot of them went on to have great careers. Now, part of his success is an issue of timing. He came in at the beginning of the hedge fund business, and he was very good at taking advantage of inefficiencies in markets and making lots of money. And he had a first mover advantage, and that's great. And then his people had good ideas, and he supported their good ideas. He was a good manager. The idea of shorting the British pound in 1992, because the British pound, they believed, given interest rates, given at the time what was called the monetary union with Europe, they believed the British pound was valued too highly, and it was pegged. It was not a floating currency. So they took on a $10 billion short position in the British pound. That takes balls. That takes real balls. And that is a good thing. That is financiers disciplining governments, forcing governments to do what is right. The UK government had to devalue its currency because its currency was overvalued. So they forced them to devalue. That was a good thing. That was capitalism working and imposing itself, if you will, on governments. The British monetary system was completely corrupt at the time. Interest rates were out of whack. The whole system in England and in Europe were out of whack. He put a $10 billion bet, which was suggested to him by one of his lieutenants. It wasn't his idea. And he made $1 billion in one day. $1 billion in one day. One of the greatest money-making ventures in human history, probably. In one day, he made $1 billion by shorting the British pound because Britain had to devalue its currency. When you short something, when it goes down in value, you make money. If you have a $10 billion position, all it has to do is devalue by 10%, and you've got $1 billion profit. Now, I look at that and I go, beautiful, wow, cool, I wish I'd done that. Then, during the Asian financial crisis, he basically helped, together with lots of other hedge funds and lots of other financiers, do the same thing in Asia. Asia had screwed up monetary policy, screwed up interest rates, and screwed up pegs, currency pegs. And they forced Asian governments to readjust their currencies, which was a healthy, good thing in the long run. Lots of pain in the short run. Healthy in the long run. And he made a lot of money off of that pain. But that's often what financiers do. They make money off of the pain of restructuring, off of the pain of bringing about a better economic outcome. So you have to respect where he got his money from. He started out managing $12 million, I think, in the 1970s. Or less than that. He started out with like 250 of his own, went up to $12 million, and I think his fund is something like $25 billion. Billion. There's nothing parasitic about what he did. He made money for investors. He helped correct misaligned economic phenomena. He constantly corrects arbitrages. One of the great hedge funds ever in history. And you got to respect that. Now, beyond that, ideologically, I'm opposed to everything he believes in. Well, to most of what he believes in. I certainly oppose to his philosophy, the ideas of Karl Popper, the idea that knowledge, in a sense, is impossible, that there is no such thing as truth, particularly, he says, in the humanities. There's some truth, there's some sense of truth in the hard sciences, but no real truth in the humanities. He's got a whole, but you got to respect the fact that he's got a whole system. And if you read, so there are 3 articles. The first one's called The Capitalist Threat. The second one's called Towards a Global Open Society. This is where he gets to be called the globalist, because he says, well, we need a global institutions because the state is failing to achieve what he calls an open society. And what he calls an open society is a democratic society which respects free speech, but also redistributes wealth. You know, kind of a mixed economy. Germany, 30 years ago. And he believes in free movement of ideas, of capital, but he also wants to tax capital because the capitalists are getting rich. And so he believes in the whole inequality thing. He could, he agrees with Piketty. He's very conventional in that sense, in terms of agreeing. Although Paul Krugman went after him, so again, he gets credit in my book for Paul Krugman going after him. And then he puts his money where his mouth is. So he funds all these initiatives. He hates nationalism, which I do too. He thinks the regime in his homeland of Hungary is a bad regime because it's moving Hungary towards authoritarianism. I agree with him. He thinks what's going on in Poland is not good. I agree with him. Now, he also wants to increase massive Muslim migration into Europe and into Hungary and into all these places. I disagree with him on that. But I agree with him about the rise of nationalism and the dangers of nationalism and the evil of nationalism. He's a huge opponent of Donald Trump. I agree with him on that, although, again, for different reasons. Right now, he's being shut out of Hungary, so Hungary is part of their nationalist efforts. Anybody who gets money from George Soros is going to be banned, is going to be out, is going to be excluded. But this is, of course, a Hungary that has already put all of its media into the hands of allies of the government, has basically become more and more and more authoritarian, a model that the Poles are trying to mimic. Central Europe is unfortunately moving towards more and more authoritarianism in the name of nationalism. They are adopting the Putin model of governance, and Putin is no hero. Putin is a villain in the world stage today. So the second article is towards a global society. And the third one is the bubble of American supremacy, where he criticizes the Iraq War and America's response to 9/11. And much of what he says in that article, some of what he says in that article is true. A lot of it is evil and stupid and false, but some of it is true. And his predictions about the failure of Iraq turn out to be true. All right. So we're objectivists, or at least I'm an objectivist, and I hope many of you are, and if you're not, you will become. We need to look at the world objectively, which means we need to look at facts, at the reality. Not guided by emotions, but guided by reason, guided by reality and facts. And when you do that, all these conspiracy theories break down. George Soros becomes the Koch brothers of the left, just more committed than the Koch brothers, because he actually invests more money than they do. But it's very similar to the Koch brothers. If you look at the Koch brothers, every single organization on the so-called right or on the libertarian side is funded by the Koch brothers. Even the Ayn Rand Institute gets some money from the Koch brothers. And the left has massive conspiracy theories about the Koch brothers that are exactly the same construction as the right's conspiracy theories about George Soros. All George Soros is an amateur intellectual who has a philosophical view of the world which guides the way he distributes his money. And he puts his money where his mouth is. He puts his money where his ideas are. He puts his money where his philosophy is. I mean, it's bad. We need to fight his ideas. But by the way, I'm finding more and more people on the right are going to agree with his latest. What's his latest big issue that George Soros is excited about, that he devoted most of his speech in Davos, where Trump just gave a speech, to? What's the one issue that today, more than any other issue, animates both the left and the right, where we can get some bipartisanship of both Republicans and Democrats? The tribes can unite. Who is the real enemy in the world today? Who does everybody hate? Who does everybody want to stifle? That's a real question. Well, if you read his speech, you will find that the vast majority of his speech at Davos was dedicated to attacking one group, the same group that Trump supporters are attacking, the same group that some objectivists on Twitter keep attacking, the same group that the left is attacking nonstop and the right is attacking nonstop, and everybody's attacking nonstop. Not Muslims, God forbid. Not China, God forbid. No. It's Facebook and Google and Apple and Amazon. It's the high-tech companies. They're the real enemy. It's their monopolies. I remember, it must have been 6 months ago or so, maybe it's longer than that, I read you an op-ed by a conservative Republican pundit who was angrily demanding the breakup of Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and all these companies. And it was written in such a way that I said, maybe this is a joke. I didn't really think so, but I said, this is the end. This is the end of the right if this is what they believe. But I thought it was an anomaly. It was a one-off. It was just this one guy. I forget his name, but a well-known writer on the right. But this has become a theme now. Everybody's after this. Everybody attacks Silicon Valley. Everybody attacks Facebook and Twitter and Amazon. They love attacking Amazon, left and right. Left and right. I haven't seen, somebody says the cover of The Economist. What's the cover of The Economist? Is that also about the evil of the technology companies? Yeah. The one group of companies still growing, still innovating, still creating, still producing, still moving the world forward. The one place on the planet where productivity is still valued. That's the one place, that's the one group that everybody, left, right, libertarians, even some objectivists, all unite against. Somebody's asking if I've listened to James Damore. Yeah, I did 2 shows on James Damore. I encourage you to go listen to them. They're some of my best shows I've ever done. Was an analysis of the James Damore memo and the response to it. But I don't care. I'm not saying these companies are perfect. I'm saying it's none of government's business. The idea that government should step in and to tear them apart. If Google wants to fire James Damore, it has every right to fire James Damore. It has every right to fire whoever they want. Are we going to get into the business of dictating to companies who they can fire and on what intellectual grounds they can and cannot fire? And I know that Twitter demonetizes certain things or takes certain videos off. It's their platform. They can do whatever the hell they want with it. But the idea that certain right-wing pundits support the idea of suing Twitter because Twitter is exercising their right over their own property, and this is supposed to be pro-free markets. Not surprising. As soon as I started talking about all these guys in Silicon Valley, the number of people listening to me on Facebook and Twitter went down significantly. All those people who are just pissed off have gone. Because I know a lot of people who listen to this show think that the enemy is Silicon Valley, that the enemy is Google and Twitter and all these guys, and that I'm delusional. And that we need government. It's the same argument like immigration. We don't trust government. You know, and those Democrats, when they get into government, they do horrible, horrible things. They're evil bastards, which I agree with, right? So let's give them more power. Let's give them the power to decide who can come into the country and who can't. Let's give them the power to determine which ideologies are good for America and which ideologies are bad, who they can keep in and who they can keep out. Let's give them the power to decide which companies, how big companies can grow and what ideological causes they can support and they can't. Let's give government more power, this government that we resent. And when Democrats get into power, yes, they'll have the more power, but what can we do? We gave the power when the Republicans won it. We thought they would use it well. All right. Somebody's saying that objectivism is trying to stand outside of history. What does that even mean? Objectivism is not trying to stand outside of history. Objectivism is the only philosophy you will find that actually explains history, that actually is fighting the trend, that actually has an explanation for what is going on in the world, and actually has a solution for what is going on in the world. It's funny, one of our large donors at the Institute asked me once, Yaron, what is the most frustrating thing for you personally in life? And I'll tell you what's the most frustrating thing for me in life. The most frustrating thing for me in life is that we have the answers. I know how to fix the world. I know how to rid the world from the Islamist threat. I know how to grow the U.S. economy by double, triple the rate of growth that it grows today. I know how to make the lives of poor people all over the world 1,000,000 times better than it is today. I know how to solve the problems facing the world. And nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. That's my biggest frustration in life, right? I love this world. I love the people in this world. I really do. I think the world is great. And one of the things that saddens me is the extent to which I see people around me afraid. So let me just finish that point. I love this world. I want to save it. I want it to be a better world for me, for the people I love, for the world, because the world's a beautiful place. People out there, amazing. Human beings are truly amazing. But nobody's listening. Nobody's listening. Nobody cares. We have the solutions. It's right here. We have the blueprint. So that's my biggest frustration in life. And the second biggest frustration is that so many of you, instead of taking this philosophy and using it as a tool for living, for loving life, for fighting for values, for having fun, for enjoying yourself, I mean fun in the deep metaphysical sense, to be happy, to sustain your happiness in your life, instead are obsessed by fear. You've accepted the fear-mongering in the culture. The number of people who think that the Muslim hordes are just outside the door of their house and going to slaughter their family and rape their women and everything. It's just going to happen any second now. I mean, really? Now I know, I've been criticized for living in a gated community. I'm not in a gated community anymore. I actually live in Puerto Rico, and I'm not afraid. I love it here. I loved it in California. And when I travel around the world, I love it almost everywhere I go. And the funny thing is, I don't know if I should get into this. People would say, I live in this gated community, detached from the world. Yet I'm the one who goes on campuses and confronts the leftists on the campuses. I'm the one who goes all over the world, including dangerous places like Paris. And I give talks on capitalism in Paris. Oh my God, I'm going to be killed. Not only are the Muslims going to be after me, but those socialists are going to be after me. And yet, I'm somehow detached from the world. It's amazing. So what I want, what would make my day, what would make more than my day, is if you guys embrace the passion for life, embrace the passion for the positive, embrace the passion for the solutions, and stop the fear. Stop being afraid. Live. Life's about living. And when you understand that what confronts us are not some malevolent conspiratorial cabals, not some Jewish conspiracy or George Soros pulling the strings, but what confronts us are ideas, and pretty bad ideas, and that we have better ideas, and that our ideas are true, and the truth wins in the long run, then what's there to be afraid of? I'm not afraid of Marx. I'm not afraid of Hegel. I'm not afraid of George Soros. I read his articles and I go, yeah, kind of interesting, cutesy, but yeah, that's shallow and stupid. That doesn't cause me to be afraid. That says I should be able to feed George Soros in a debate. I should be able to convince young people that my ideas are better than his ideas. And that only makes me optimistic about the future. Because when I see the ideas that we're facing, when I see how superficial they are, when I see how bad they are, how uninteresting they are, I think to myself, we're going to win. It's going to be easy. It's an ideological battle. Ideological battle. What do you got to be afraid of? If you have the truth on your side, you're going to win. If you have the truth on your side, then you know, at least in your own life, you will win. All right. Now, in a sense, it's all about ideas. That's the theory of history. And that's how history works. History is guided by ideas. And right now, history is being guided by, if you will, a vacuum of ideas. And into that vacuum are coming all the primitive ideas of tribalism, of nationalism. That's what's guiding the world today. The vacuum of ideas. We should be able to beat a vacuum. Then come on. Let's go win. All right, we've got a bunch of callers. I'm going to take a short break to catch my breath here before I go off on another rant. I've got 3 callers. If you want to call in, if you want to challenge me, discuss any additional ideas, anything else, go ahead. Let's see. The number is 347-324-3075. Don't forget to press 1 after you dial the number. So after you get connected. 347-324-3075. Then press 1. We'll be right back and to take your calls after this message.
2017 marks the 60th anniversary of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. 12 years in the writing, it is Ayn Rand's masterwork. Despite being published 6 decades ago, the novel continues to gain recognition and profoundly influence business leaders, thought leaders, and a growing number of political leaders. Its presence in today's culture cannot be denied. The fascination with Atlas Shrugged persists because it grapples with the fundamental questions of human existence and presents radically new answers. Whether you're an adoring fan who wants to add this new addition to your personal library, or someone who wants to read the book for the first time to see what all the fuss is about, Pick up your copy of Atlas Shrugged today. An updated cover for the mass market edition of the novel recently hit stores. Check it out. You can order your copy today on Amazon.
All right, we are back. Okay, let's jump on the phones. Let's see. You've been waiting very patiently. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Hello?
Yep, you're on.
Hey, it's Michael.
Oh, Michael, you dialed before I said a word, so there's no way you called in to contradict me because I hadn't said anything.
No, well, I mean, I was listening because I knew you wouldn't take my call immediately, and I knew I'd find something that you were wrong on.
Oh, so that's the strategy now.
No,
dial
I'm
in advance and then catch me. All
the
right.
claws are coming back.
All right.
I just got a couple.
I'm gonna start
All right.
memorizing
Well,
your phone number, not taking your calls. That's what I'll do.
Oh, really?
I'm
You're
kidding.
scared.
I'm
You're
kidding.
scared
Yeah.
of the reason that I've got in my head.
There you go.
All right.
So what's up?
All right. So
What did I
I've
do
got
this time?
two little passing. All this has got to do with what you just said, which was a long-winded rant.
Don't call what I say
got
long-winded or rant. That's ad hominem.
Oh, you're a big boy. You can handle it.
That was a passionate dissertation.
Yeah, well, funny you mentioned dissertation because I'm going to mention that in just a second. But I just wanted to make two comments, and I got a real question for you.
All right.
First, I absolutely disagree that the notion the economy is not growing under Trump. 2.5% is a pretty healthy growth, but I'll tell you why.
Who said the economy is not growing under Trump?
From my perspective.
Who said that?
I can't hear you.
Who said the economy is not
The
growing under Trump?
The CBO.
No, who said the economy is not growing under Trump?
You did.
No, I didn't.
You said at the very beginning.
I said the economy is not growing
absolutely
fast.
promise you that.
I said, and the economy is not growing that much more today than it grew under Obama. But I don't want to get into that. That's boring.
That's fine.
Yep.
And I just want to say one other comment that I got my question. The reason Soros attacked Chicago is the same reason that I am a Chicagoan, because they are practical. Austrian school will never be fully implemented. No one's going to ever get our government completely out of economics. It's a fool's errand.
Have you ever read George Soros? Michael, have you read George Soros?
No.
Have you read George Soros?
The reason
I'm asking a simple question. Have you read George Soros' critique of neoclassical economics?
I said no like 4 times.
So you shouldn't claim that you know why he's criticizing them until you read his criticism.
Well, I'm just using logic.
No, you're not using logic, because
until
you know what somebody's argued, you can't explain it. You can't have an explanation of something you don't know. And that's not the reason he criticizes. He criticized Chicago. Actually, he criticized Chicago because Chicago is unpractical. Because of its equilibrium theory, it does not describe reality. It describes a false reality, and he's right in his criticism. So, but you should read his critique. His critique is about equilibrium theory. But anyway, what's your question?
Can I say what I was going to say at the end, please?
Sure.
I said that it's not practical in the sense that it never will be implemented, because as soon as there's a downturn, the masses will demand the government fix it. So it's not a problem. He's never going to have to worry about that. Okay, so here's my question. I'm currently writing my dissertation for my master's on the history of the Industrial Revolution post-Civil War. I don't know if Trump is effectively, whether intentionally or by blind luck, trying to recreate the American economy during the post-Civil War Industrial Revolution. Tariffs, he just slapped tariffs on renewables, low taxes, low regulation. This is called the robber baron days by the leftists. I actually think it was pretty effective at the time, because tariffs were meant to protect resources of an agrarian nation. But now, I believe it's a very bad thing, because we're the most prosperous nation on earth, and these tariffs kind of put us out of the competition in the global market. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it was a bad idea in the late 19th century, and it's a bad idea today. And I think that the role of tariffs in the American Industrial Revolution of the late 19th century are exaggerated by economists and economic historians, and the tariffs were not as bad. And to the extent that they were significant tariffs in the late 19th century, it hindered the ability of the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy could have grown even faster and better without them. But the idea that he's trying to recreate the late 19th century economy is, I wish, it's not even close. And so you have to understand where we were I mean, you know this, right? In the late 19th century, post-Civil War, the federal government spent something like 3.5% of GDP. Today, the federal government spends something around 20% of GDP, and Donald Trump wants to increase that, not decrease it. At the time of the late 19th century, federal regulations almost didn't exist. I mean, there were some regulations on the railroads primarily, and then there was, then starting with antitrust in the 1890s, was the beginning of the era of regulations, and that really started growing in the early teens under Wilson. But for a large segment of the post-Civil War era, there was very little regulations other than railroads. Today, every aspect of American life is regulated. So maybe Trump is deregulating a little bit here and there, and it's a little bit. If you'd listen to my shows this week, I also gave lots of examples where the Trump administration is supporting increased regulations. For example, in housing markets and in mortgage markets, they want to increase the power of Freddie and Fannie-like entities. So the Treasury Department under Mnuchin is pro-regulations, even as other parts of the government are anti-regulation. So there is no comparison between the kind of economy that Trump is trying to create, if he even has an image of what he's trying to create, and the 19th century, partially because they're so distant. But that's not a goal. You know, it's not like Trump or anybody in his administration knows what the late 19th century was like and wants to aim at that. Now, the only similarity there might be around tariffs, but I think you're right. Tariffs would do a lot more danger today than back then. Even then, they were damaging, but they would do a lot more danger today than even back then in a globalized, competitive economy, a global economy like we have today.
And I tend to agree, and I just want to make it clear.
Can I record that? Somebody please write that down in big letters. Okay, thanks.
What?
Go ahead, Michael.
Sorry. I said I tend to agree with you, and I want to be clear that at the beginning of my question, I said whether by intention or blind luck.
Yeah.
And of course, the situation has changed. We're not the same country. I'm saying only the policies that are becoming a reality are similar. They're not exactly the same, obviously.
But I don't.
And I think it's important to mention.
I don't think you can make that similarity because the differences are so large. It really, I just think you're exaggerating the case, even if it's by blind luck, because we'd have to go so far to get anywhere close to that we're not even going to get into the same general vicinity.
Maybe I am exaggerating the similarities, and that's fine. I think it's also important to mention that back in those days, when it was little to no regulation whatsoever, the government, like if the workers decided to strike or protest, the government would actually use troops against them.
In some cases, that's true, and that was a violation of rights. But partially the workers were violating rights too, because, for example, they were blocking entry into they were blocking, what do you call it, replacement workers from entering a plant. That they don't have a right to do that. So it's appropriate for the police to come in and break up a demonstration that is blocking people from going in. So some of that use by government of force against workers was justified. Some of it was not, but some of it was justified. And again, you have to be careful when reading these histories to make sure that you're reading people who are objective. There's a lot of rewriting of history. I hope you're reading Folsom. I hope you're reading Bert Folsom.
I actually, believe it or not, I read a lot of essays by Milton Friedman when he recalls economic history. And
that's good, but go find Bert Folsom because he's a better historian. Milton Friedman was just not a historian by profession. Folsom was, and he's excellent on the late 19th century.
You say Brett Folsom?
Burton Folsom. He's got you can find the book. The book is The Myth of the Robber Barons. The Myth of the Robber Barons is his most famous book. But then I would read everything he's written because everything is good. All right.
As you know, I don't agree with the robber barons.
Yeah, but the myth of the robber barons tells the real story, which is fascinating. It's Burton, Burton, Folsom, Folsom,
Hillsdale College.
What's that?
From Hillsdale College.
That's right, from Hillsdale College. He's excellent. All right. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate the call. I'm sure I'll hear from you soon again. All right, let's go next caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
This is Neil.
Hey, Neil, what's up?
Nothing much. I wanted to ask a question about since we're talking about conspiracy theories. There's one that you brought up, which is the Koch brothers and how they fund some libertarian think tanks and the Ayn Rand Institute some of the time. But I just want to know, with that conspiracy theory, would there be like some truth in it, like with George Soros, and he's funding all of these liberal think tanks, and because of that they have to conform to his beliefs. So wouldn't it be the same with the Koch brothers with everything they fund?
I mean, to some extent, both that's true, but the conspiracy is that this is some kind of devious, secret, manipulative thing, and all it is funding a bunch of think tanks. Now, he's not going to fund us if we do stuff that he disagrees with or that he hates, but I can tell you for the Ayn Rand Institute, Charles Koch or the Koch brothers have zero, nada influence on the beliefs of the intellectuals at the Ayn Rand Institute. They have no input into that. The same is true at Cato. I'm sure the Koch brothers disagree with certain things that Cato does. And even in the Republican Party, a lot of the people that the Koch brothers fund, they don't agree with completely. For example, the Kochs are very secular, and yet they often fund religious conservatives. They disagree completely with Trump, even though they fund the Republican Party. So it's not some devious plot. It's them supporting generally people who are advocating for ideas that are in their direction. And I think the same as George Soros. I'm sure that he funds a lot of groups that he doesn't agree with everything that they do and everything that they say. And I'm sure that they don't all get their marching orders from George Soros. I'm sure that they have their own independent ideas about what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. But they are generally, broadly speaking, in agreement.
That's pretty interesting. I didn't know the Koch brothers were secular, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. Nobody would know that, but they are. They're not religious at all. I've met Charles Koch, and I've heard him and his brother speak, and they're huge supporters of the arts. One of my favorite things in New York is you go to Lincoln Center, and you see in these big letters on the ballet on the ballet thing, the David Koch New York City Ballet. And I think all those lefties who every time they go to ballet have to pay respects to David Koch. I mean, that must drive them crazy because they think he's the most evil person in the world. But no, they're very secular. They're very intellectual. Charles Koch is a really smart guy, and he knows his stuff, and he's read a lot of philosophy. I disagree with him on a bunch of stuff, but we disagree, but that doesn't stop him from funding some of what we do at the Ayn Rand Institute. It doesn't stop him from funding organizations that I completely disagree with. There's no grand conspiracy being manipulated by some council of billionaires dictating what everybody does in some coordinated fashion. Doesn't exist on the right or on the libertarian side, and it doesn't exist on the left. That makes sense?
All right. It makes sense. Also, I want to know what you think about this one conspiracy theory that this is what I heard from a Black Panther I was debating one time. That because I'm sorry, I'm trying to word my properly word my sentence. What he said was that racism exists, and he associates most rich people were being racist, and that's why a lot of like minorities can't get any job.
I mean, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think just that's stupid and wrong. Now, racism does exist, and I think racism is more prevalent in America today than most people think, or most of my listeners think. But I do not think that the reason people don't get jobs is because of racism, or that's why unemployment is high, or so on. I think that's nonsense, or that most rich people are racist. I think that quite the contrary. I think most rich people are probably less racist than non-rich people. But that's all just stupid ideas. It's not a conspiracy theory where you're given an explanation, a big explanation for a big phenomena in the world based on some manipulation of the world by some group on the top, or that certain things didn't really happen, or the way we are told officially, or that aliens out there. I guess you could explain, if he said the reason blacks don't have jobs or good jobs is because whites are conspiring against them in this massive, then that would be a conspiracy theory. And that's the same thing. People confront phenomena they don't understand, phenomena that's upsetting, phenomena that they find fearful, and they invent stories that make the explanation simple instead of the more complicated reality or the more complex truth that is out there. People want simplicity. Unfortunately, simplicity is not always truth.
True. I agree.
Good.
But usually it equals truth because of Occam's razor.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
Yep. Okay, good. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
This is Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
Hi. I kind of have a question about aliens. I want to know your thoughts on immigration and welfare.
So these are aliens in the sense of immigrants, not aliens in the sense of flying spaceships and flying saucers. I was worried there for a minute.
Yes, sir.
I love immigrants. I'm an immigrant. I am a big supporter of immigration into the United States. I think immigration is a huge benefit both to America and to the immigrants themselves. I think that nobody should get welfare. I don't think that Americans should get welfare, and I don't think that immigrants should get welfare. I don't think anybody should get welfare. In order to prevent immigrants from getting welfare, I think there can be laws that say immigrants can't get welfare. I also think that you could have an immigration system. I proposed this a few weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I proposed an immigration system that was based on work. You can get a work visa in the United States. I don't care what kind of work. As long as you can fund yourself, you can come in. And that would eliminate the fear that they would consume all the welfare dollars that we have. But generally, I think that the whole welfare issue is exaggerated when it comes to immigrants to try to block immigration.
I think that's the biggest argument I hear lately, especially there was a British gentleman speaking about it today on something on YouTube, and I don't know how much truth there is to all the rapes going on in Europe with all the immigration from the Middle East. I don't know what to believe anymore I listen to people. So
yeah, no, it's very hard to tell what's really going on there. But there's no question, I think, that there is an increase in violence, and in particular, it appears that there's an increase in sexual assault and rape by Muslim immigrants in these countries. And there are a lot of reasons for this. There's a lot of, the fact that there was mass migration, and therefore there was no opportunity to assimilate these people. The fact that these countries give these people welfare as soon as they arrive. Basically, if you get to Germany or to Sweden, they write you a check and they give you a house, even though a lot of Swedes and a lot of Germans don't have housing because it's so expensive. And then they don't assimilate the people. They don't allow them to work, or they don't provide them with jobs, or they don't encourage them to get jobs. They just put them on welfare and give them a check. They never encourage them to assimilate into the culture. And then they don't persecute them. So they don't prosecute when there's real crimes engaged. So instead of the police being super vigilant in going after the criminals and putting them in jail and throwing away the keys. I mean, my view, if you rape somebody, you should never see the light of day. You know, if you really, a violent rape, they should throw away the keys. This guy who just sexually harassed the gymnasts, throw away the keys. He should stay in jail for the rest of his life. And if you did that in Europe to some of these Muslims, then they would get the message. At least they'd understand that that was unacceptable. But they don't. They kind of put them in jail for 6 months or 2 years. Most of the time, they don't even try to catch them. Most of the time, they don't even do anything. So I would blame the cultures of Europe for being soft, for not assimilating immigrants, 1, giving them welfare up the kazoo, 2, and 3, not actually prosecuting them under the law. You've got to prosecute them. You've got to be tough on them. You've got to clearly, unequivocally stand for the values you believe in. And one of those is no violence against women. And even if they do it against their own women, so female genital mutilation or beating your wife or things like that, they should be put in jail for all of that, which would be a cultural shock, a real cultural shock for these Muslims, and assert the values that the Germans and the Swedes and the Europeans claim to hold as dear. But they don't do that. So what they're basically saying is our values are meaningless. You can walk all over us. You can do whatever the hell they want with us. So I think the whole issue of Muslim violence in Europe is easy to solve, but there isn't the will yet of these governments and of these countries to actually do it.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure, pleasure. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening. And calling them names, by the way, as some people in YouTube are doing, is just stupid, unintellectual, anti-intellectual, does not help the debate, does not move the discussion forward, does not add anything. It makes you look stupid, nothing more than that. So make an argument. Make an argument. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Is
Hello?
this me, sorry?
Yeah, it's you. Go ahead.
Wait, hello, is this me, Alexander?
It is you, Alexander, from the UK. It sounds
Oh, sorry. I just thought it'd be a longer queue. I'm Alexander, I'm calling from London. I've got a question about ethics, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So it's in relation to Gail Wynand, and the whole. So I think so. You got you're seeking happiness. The happiness is dependent on achieving your values. The question is obviously what values to pursue.
Yep.
And I struggle to see how not achieving power over people, as in you want to change the mob or whatever, but just getting money from them, as Gail Wynand describes himself as an alchemist, how that isn't sustaining your life and how that would contradict morality and the requirements of your happiness.
Well, because it's sustaining your material life while undercutting your spiritual life, when undercutting your reasoning, your nature as a human being. So by peddling lies, by peddling to the masses, by peddling deceit, and making money off of that, that is borderline stealing. It's not quite stealing, so it's not illegal, but it's immoral. And yet it sustains your life materially, but it doesn't sustain you mentally. And this is why Gail can never be truly happy, because while he's got all the riches, he's got all the material necessity to stay alive, he doesn't have the values, the consistent mental attitude, the consistent moral attitude to actually achieve happiness. Happiness is not about just attaining the material values necessary for your existence. It's about attaining the moral values necessary for your existence. It means placing reason above all else, and by peddling lies, you're in a sense undercutting reason. And think about one example, the example illustrated in the book. When your papers become the tool for destroying a man that you love, Howard Rourke, then you have created the tools that are destroying one of your prime spiritual values. The joy you get from Howard Roark's creations and the existence of a man like Howard Roark. So you're undercutting your own values. Now, the spiritual values, because you're making money in the process, but the spiritual values are more important than the material values. So he cannot be happy because he is undercutting his own life by undercutting his own values, even as he is making money. It's the same reason why Howard Roark has to go to the quarry to stay whole, to stay consistent, to stay a hero, to keep his integrity, to stay honest, and therefore to fulfill his commitment to reason.
If I may interrupt.
Say that again?
This dichotomy between the spiritual and the physical values, isn't it surely only the spiritual values that are conducive to producing the material values that are values? Otherwise, you're just holding this sort of platonic, oh, it's good for its own sake thing.
Yeah, so values can be used in two different senses. Real values, i.e. values that promote real life, which means life as a whole with no mind-body dichotomy. Values that are consistent both on the level of the material and the spiritual. But then there are also what you could call false values, values that you pursue that actually ultimately undercut your spiritual ability to achieve happiness.
But success. I mean, how can you be undercutting your spiritual if you're providing for your physical? Surely the whole purpose of the spiritual is to serve the physical and
no.
To say,
why would that be?
It's serving my physical.
Why would that be? I mean, there's no dichotomy between the spiritual and the physical. So the reason you can do that, it's the same as stealing. I can steal your money and
that's
I'm providing.
What I mean.
Right. I'm stealing. If I steal from you, I'm providing for my physical needs because I'm feeding myself and so on. But I'm at the same time destroying my capacity to enjoy those physical needs. And I'm destroying my self-esteem, which is a spiritual value. Say that again.
If you conclude honestly that you're not going to get caught, and like Gail Weinand, and you know what you're doing consciously, then and so you got no inner contradiction there.
There's a contradiction.
How are you going to feel guilty or bad about it?
Of course you feel bad about it. So stealing is bad not because you get caught. Stealing is bad because it's a negation of your own reason. It's a negation of your own purpose. It's the undercutting of your values, of your cardinal values, of your most important values. So stealing, unless you're literally starving and it's your only option, and then you steal just to survive, and then you find a way to compensate the person you stole from. But stealing as a method to survive, as a methodology, even if you never get caught, is unbelievable destructive to self. I'm going to do a whole episode on this, talk about lying and talk about stealing and why lying and stealing are never, lying in a sense of attaining values through deceit, are never in your self-interest, even though you might get some material well-being in the short run. Even if you never get caught, you're undercutting reality, you're undercutting reason, you're undercutting your self-esteem, which is the foundation for every other value that you have. So the material value loses all meaning because you have no self-esteem. So you get the money, but you know you earned it by deceit. You know you didn't really create anything. You know you didn't make anything. You know you didn't change. You didn't actually create a value. You know that completely destroys your capacity for self-esteem, which is far more important than any given meal that you have, far more important than any amount of money that you might have in the bank.
So you cannot base. So you think it's impossible to have self-esteem based on your ability of power over others, no matter how great you get that. How great that power is.
Absolutely, I believe that. I think if you
but
look
at if self-esteem is just based on your values, and if you value your power over others, then
no, but that's a completely subjectivist. This is exactly the point of view that Ayn Rand rejects. That's a completely subjectivist view of values. Values are not whatever you feel like. Values are not whatever you think at the point of any point in time you want. Values are what existentially, in reality, based on your nature as a human being, actually lead to your success as a human being. So power over others is not objectively a value for a rational human being. And therefore, even though you might value it, it is not a value to you. So there's your subjective values don't mean they're right. And the question is, how do we find the right values to bring us happiness? Power over others is not a right value that'll bring you happiness. When Ayn Rand talks about happiness through attaining values, she's talking about specific type of values: pro-life, pro-production, pro-reason values, not anything that crosses your mind that you want to have. That's not a value. All right, thanks for the question. It's a good question. It's a deep question. I'll be discussing that a lot more because I want to do a show on honesty, and that'll definitely come up in that show. And the whole approach of Ayn Rand to ethics is so different. And it's so different than what a lot of the libertarians teach, and a lot of different than anything that academics teach, because she really views values as objective, and that there is that at least at that level of principle, there are certain values that enhance human life, and there's certain, call them values, pseudo-values, that destroy human life. But some people could value, in quote, these pseudo-values. They're just wrong, and they'll never achieve happiness as a consequence. All right, we got a couple more callers, and then we'll probably call it quits. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Hey, Dr. Brooks.
Hey.
So I have a question regarding mysticism and religion and the conspiracies that kind of are caused by the chasing of the devil.
Sure. Talk up a little bit, because it's hard to hear you.
All right. Okay. Maybe a little background. Okay, I'm Danish, so it's getting late, and I thought about the rise of religion in America and how back in Europe, like 500 years ago, we had this purging of the devil through burning witches and so on. And if you see maybe not as radical a rise again, but maybe more like a radical, Hillary Clinton is the devil, and so on, the purging of the left by religion.
I agree with you. So I think religion tees us up for conspiracy theories, because what does religion say? Religion says that the truth is not to be found in reality and reason. The truth is to be found through revelation. In other words, the truth is to be found in emotion, in a spiritual experience. That's where truth is. And that, again, that leads to fear, because it detaches us from reality. It makes us fear the world. We have no explanations for what's going on out there. And as a consequence, we latch on to anything that seems to explain things in simple ways. And so I think the rise of conspiracy theories is very much linked to the rise of religion in America. And I'd say more than this. There's a good book by Daniel Pipes about conspiracy theories in the Muslim world. And the Muslim world is a million times worse than the Western world in terms of conspiracy theories. And the reason is they're more religious, they're more mystical. The more mystical you are, the more simplistic, emotionally satisfying, materialistic explanations for what's going on in the world you need. So it's the devil, it's witches, or it's the Jews, it's George Soros. It's something, simple, emotionally satisfying. You don't need reason, you don't need evidence, you don't need facts, you don't need objectivity and an objective assessment of what's going on in the world, and you're done. And that's exactly what you see in the Muslim world. The Muslim world is rife with conspiracy theories. Many of the conspiracy theories we believe in the West start off over there. And everything that happens, they have a conspiracy about. It's the Mossad, the CIA. It's always somebody. It's never actually ideas shaping history. It's always some evil force shaping history. And you're absolutely right that it links completely to religion and to religious attitudes and to mysticism more broadly. All right?
Yeah.
It's a good call.
So,
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, you talked about your target audience, so I just want to present myself. I'm 17 and I'm from Denmark, and I'm very inspired by Ayn Rand and your podcast. I'm also a Patreon.
Excellent. Well,
Truly
thank you.
appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate that. That's wonderful to hear, and it's exactly what I want to hear. And you are my target audience. And next time I'm in Copenhagen, let's meet up, because I come to Copenhagen at least once a year. It turns out.
Yeah, I'm coming to Ocon 2018 in California.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, I look forward to meeting you in California then at Ocon.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call, and get some sleep.
I will.
All right. Okay, 2 more callers. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hello?
Yes, hi.
It's Michael again.
Oh, my God. All right, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm trying to end the show and go to sleep. Come on, man. It's already, what is it? It's 10:30 over here.
Okay, well, this shouldn't take long. I hope not, anyway. Because you need your sleep. But I've pondered more on a conversation we had about Stefan Molyneux, and it keeps bothering me for many reasons. Just for one thing, you called Steph anti-Israel, and I went on a mission to watch all of Steph's available videos on Israel, because I don't remember him ever being anti-Israel, and I found nothing but glowing endorsements of Israel. Now, he could have deleted the old videos. That's
I'll find it and I'll send it to you. Let's make this short, because, look, I don't want to argue about Stefan Molyneux.
That's fine.
I've said everything I want to say about him. I despise the guy, and he is not just anti-Israel. He's a real anti-Semite.
All right. Have you ever heard of UPB?
No.
Universal Preferable Behavior? It's an ethical system in which there's no God, there's no selfishness or Ayn Rand. It's just certain values are universal using logic, and you can build an ethical system on pure logic. There's no it don't have to be self-interested, but it's a philosophy built up by Locke, and Stefan made a book about it. He kind of revamped it a little bit and made it better. And I don't know. I really believe that Jens would have a productive conversation. And I don't know if you would agree with this. You're certainly more, educated on Ayn Rand. But I don't know if Ayn Rand would approve of your hard stance of not talking to certain people you disagree with.
Oh my God! You have no idea. Ayn Rand would think I was a moderate wimp when it came to how I deal with these people.
Can I finish?
No, no, not when you.
It's going. Okay.
No, I've said all I've got to say about this topic. I won't. There's certain people I will not talk to. I will not sanction them. I don't believe in sanctioning evil. I learned this from Ayn Rand. I give her full credit for it. This is part of Ayn Rand's philosophy. This is not some added stuff that I put on there. Ayn Rand was vehement about this. This was not, and I'm not guessing here. All you have to do is listen to some of her lectures and Q&As. She did not tolerate.
Yeah, I know.
So, and if she would not go on stage with certain people, she would not tolerate certain people. And again, I think she would think I was a moderate when it comes to Trump, that I was a moderate when it comes to some of these people on the alt-right. So,
Do you think that going on his show would expand your audience?
Yes, but it goes back to
so it's going against your self-interest to not talk to him.
It goes back. It's why Rourke walked away from the Bank Commission building. I have integrity, and I'm willing to give up audience and dollars to guard my integrity. Anyway, the whole issue of sanctioning evil is an issue I'll have to do a show on. I have to admit, I don't have the patience for it right now, Michael. Sorry.
Well, can I just tell you why it bothers me, and I'll get off the phone?
Sure.
The reason that kind of talk bothers me, and the reason I don't like that at all, is because it opens the door up to SJWs saying we have to deplatform free market conservatives because they're advocating violence.
I am for okay, so let me be clear on this. I am for deplatforming people. I have no problem, absolutely no problem. So if I ran Twitter, I would deplatform Nazis. I would deplatform Islamist terrorists. I would deplatform lots of people. I have no problem. I am not tolerant of evil points of view, and I do not believe that on my platform, those points of view have legitimacy or should be given equal access. If I ran a university, there are certain points of view that would not be taught in my classrooms. There would be certain points of view that do not stand on equal footing with the truth. So if you're a Nazi professor, I would fire you. If you're an Islamist, you're fired. If you're Noam Chomsky, you're fired. So I'm all for having standards. I think the social justice warriors have the wrong standards.
That's not the same thing.
But it is the same thing.
That's not. No, it's not. It's really not. 'Cause would you do that if you were in government?
No.
Would you deplatform?
No. But the social justice warriors are not in government.
The point.
Now, the social justice warriors are not in government. But I'm not defending the social justice warriors. What I'm saying is you've got to have standards. Molyneux is beyond my standards, and I would deplatform Molyneux if I had my own platform. I don't, so I can't deplatform him. I wouldn't tolerate alt-right on my platform if it was my platform. But I don't have a platform. And I certainly don't think the government should do it. So I don't agree with the social justice warriors. I think they're scum, and I think they're awful. But I have standards. I believe in the truth. And I believe certain people are so beyond the pale in terms of what they believe that I will have nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with them. And and that's fine. And some people don't want to have anything to do with me. And that's cool. I have no problem with that.
The problem with that, though, is you're defining truth as you see it, but you don't know every truth out there.
That's fine.
So,
that's fine. All I can do is define truth as I see it and try to be as objective as possible and try to be as consistent within reason and refer to reality. And when I say something that's not true, people like you jump all over me, and I embrace that. I don't shut you down. But I am not willing to engage with every human being out there who I find despicable. If you're despicable, I don't engage with you, period. It's very simple. All right, Mike, I really don't want to get into this. And I keep saying that, and I keep getting sucked into it.
No, I just think it's a waste of your intellect.
Well, I don't think it is because you don't understand the virtue of integrity. But I'm cutting you off. I don't usually do that to you. I'm cutting you off because I really don't want to talk about it. All right, we got one more caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this? And I'm losing.
Aloha, it's Stuart.
Hey, Stuart, I'm losing listeners as I'm engaging in this discussion. Hey, Stuart, how's it going?
And I hope you lose some more.
No, I don't want to lose.
Before I ask the question, may I give a quick answer to Michael's question about Stefan Molyneux?
Well, you can send him the link. I know you have all the links out there.
Oh, okay. On July 21st, 2014, Stefan Molyneux uploaded a video called The Truth About Immigration, What They Won't Tell You. And he actually cites David Duke's podcast co-host, Kevin McDonald, about how communism is just a Jewish conspiracy.
Yeah, do you have the episode where he did about Israel, which is just horrifically anti-Israel?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, if you could.
So I can send those to Michael.
Yeah, if you know Michael's address, send it to him. If not, send it to me, and I'll forward it to Michael.
Oh, so my question is about something that's very libertarians like to say. They say that the family unit is a socialist society that works because everyone knows each other. Yeah. So if someone tries to shirk, you can pressure that person. And they say you only need capitalism outside of the family unit because when you're in a big city, everything is so impersonal. You know, people don't know each other. So people can try to cheat in secret, and that's why you need contracts, you need private deeds, and all those things. So what do you think about them saying the family unit is a good form of socialism that
it's
works?
Silly, and it comes from Hayek. Unfortunately, Hayek, I think he's the first to articulate this case and makes a big deal out of it. Maybe Adam Smith even talks about it. I don't know. I can't remember, but certainly Hayek makes a big deal out of this. I think it's completely mistaken, partially because it applies economic ideas to areas that are not economics. The family is not an economic unit. The family is a social unit and you don't apply economic concepts. There's no capitalism within the family. It's a silly idea to think there's socialism or capitalism. There is a form of exchange that's not monetary, but there's still a form of exchange. I think what they're really getting to, and Hayek was a little bit more sophisticated about this, what he said is that the nature of family is we're altruistic in family, but that you cannot be altruistic in the marketplace. So in the marketplace, it's okay to have self-interest, and that, again, is similar to Adam Smith. Now, I reject that because I think that what we are in the family is egoistic. I think we're selfish in the family. I think a healthy family is a selfish family. It's a family where individuals within the family are pursuing their rational self-interest. And where there's no pursuit of self-interest, the family falls apart. When there's sacrifice and altruism in a family, then that family is unhappy, it's miserable, and it falls apart. But to apply economic ideas to a family unit is just silly. It's true. People say, in a family, each gets according to his needs, from each according to his ability. But that's silly. It's a completely different set of contracts. It's a completely different set of relationships. It's not economics. It's about ethics.
Yeah, I think Atlas Shrugged talked a lot about this. I think that among family members who are adults, there should be reciprocity.
Yeah,
if someone's always mooching off of you and is always being abusive, I think you are justified in distancing yourself.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call that capitalist. I would call that selfish. So selfishness works within the family, and it should be a guiding principle within a family. People pursue their rational self-interest. And if somebody misbehaves, there need to be consequences within the family. And if somebody is abusive or if somebody is a leech, then the family needs to distance, or the more productive people need to distance themselves from that person. So, but I wouldn't talk about it in terms of socialism and capitalism. I would talk about it in terms of ethics, because that's what's appropriate when discussing human relationship on that scale. All right. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the support. Okay, this is going to be the last person. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
It's Michael again.
Oh, no, Michael. Forget it.
It's not on Molyneux.
Next time. Just call again next time. You hold it for next time. Enough.
It's a short question.
All right, short question. I'll believe it when I hear it. Go ahead. I don't know why I give it to you.
Okay, I'm now a god. Yeah. I can grant you a wish.
Yeah.
All right? Tomorrow, I can remake the definition of selfish, and I will give you a new word, and everybody will abide by it. Everyone knows it. It's called self-full.
Yeah.
Because I think that's more proper. Selfless,
right.
self-full.
You've asked the question. Let me answer it. You said it was short. Self-full self-full is a nonsensical concept that, again, is trying to get around the fact that selfish is the right word, selfish is a good word. Self-full is some kind of holistic nonsense about the self being a whole with everybody else. I did a whole show on selfishness. I don't want to repeat myself, but it's not any use, and it doesn't advance the conversation forward. And as I suspected, I'm going to cut you off. What the hell? All right, there is another caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. This truly is the last caller because I'm getting tired. Plus, I'm going to run out of time.
Good evening, Mr. Brook.
Hey, who's this?
This is Diego from Florida.
Hey, Diego.
I have a quick one for you.
You have what?
I'm sorry if I have a quick question for you.
Good. Quick is good.
I'm sorry if I'm going to mischaracterize Mr. Epstein, but my question is, why was he so fixated on a literal definition? Didn't he have any better arguments than that?
No, he didn't, and that's the reality. The fact is that he disagrees with me on the nature of ethics, but he doesn't want to argue that. So it's much easier to pretend that the conflict between us is just about a word, when the real conflict between us is about the nature of morality. He's conventional. This is why I kept going to Adam Smith. Adam Smith is a conventional moralist. He was a Christian moralist. He's an altruist moralist. He's pretty simple and conventional. And but they want
So in a sense that he,
but they want
the redefinition of the word sacrifice or selfish as offensive to his morality.
Yeah. So no,
like,
well,
did he have to have a certain meaning for his morality to work?
No, what he wants is to pretend that Ayn Rand agrees with him. What he wants is to get the prestige of Ayn Rand agreeing with him. That, there's no conflict between Ayn Rand and me. It's just the word. I wish he just used a different word. Yeah. No, you disagree, I wanted to say to Epstein, and I should have said to Epstein. I said it, but not as forcefully as I should have. You disagree with every single one of her virtues and values. All you can think about when you think about morality is compassion. I kept saying that. All you talk about is compassion. So his whole moral framework is wrong, but he wants to be friendly with Ayn Rand because he admires Ayn Rand at certain points, and he doesn't want to reject her whole theory, and he doesn't want to be unfriendly to me. So he pretends that the only conflict between us is this little conflict that's insignificant about a word. But it's not. It's much deeper
I think he
than
must
that.
have. I think he must have skipped over her theory of definitions first.
And of course, he ignored the fact that she has a whole theory of definitions, which is again something I said during the show, which I did on selfishness.
Thank you, Mr. Brook. You have a good evening.
All right. Good. Thanks a lot. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening. Those of you who survived, who are still with me, we've still got over 100 people listening live. Excellent. Thank you, and I guess I'll see you again tomorrow morning because I'm doing another 2-hour show at 12 p.m. East Coast time. So I will be back tomorrow morning. If I wake up, you guys are exhausting, particularly Michael. He exhausts me. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.